This presentation is a summarized version of my doctoral project aimed to address the culture of silence surrounding unplanned pregnancy and abortion. It also advocates to decriminalize abortion and, in turn, decrease maternal mortality. I am Chris Achebe. I will also look into the fundamental root cause of unintended pregnancy and/or abortion and a little bit of thinking forward, casuistry. Sex is ubiquitous, so there is need to emphasize sex education awareness, eliminate shaming and stigmatization when mistakes occur. CHOICE Advocacy Group BAG is a novel project whose goals of care, GOC, is for the individual and family saddled with unintended pregnancy. Published articles and subjective heartbreaking anecdotes were reviewed. Disclosure: I volunteered at a pregnancy counseling center, witnessed heartbroken women firsthand. Started by meeting their needs, by fully being present and deliberately listening to each client's need. It was therapeutic for me and for them as well. And like the iceberg theory, I realized that there is often a deeper meaning to a story. Likewise, existence of unplanned pregnancy pales in comparison to what is beneath the need for many women to contemplate abortions. I will argue the emotions and experiences are deeply personal and cannot be solved with one-size-fits-all approach. I will be using ethical principles of autonomy, beneficence, malfeasance, and justice. Reason for the presentation: early and continuing sex education empowers. Responsibility is symbiotic with autonomy, as we know. And decriminalizing abortion decreases maternal fetal mortality. I've repeated that several times already. It is really beneficial to empower all, especially girls and women, with basic reproductive knowledge. Restrictive abortion law is a malfeasance. It really hurts everyone. In third world countries like Nigeria, thousands of abortions are performed covertly by many non-licensed providers. They thrive economically due to restrictive abortion laws. Now, arguably, many religious and local leaders and organizational stakeholders seemingly choose silence on this moral and ethical dilemma of female and fetal suicide. A plethora of articles on the subject proves autonomy of thousands of females are stifled, while male sex partners seem untouchable. I boldly remark, this is a travesty that requires justice, beginning with changes in laws and policies. And what, if I may be bold to say, changes in culture and patriarchal norms as well. The World Health Organization, in their report, stated 6 out of 10 of all unintended pregnancies end in an induced abortion. Around 45% of all abortions are unsafe, of which 97% take place in developing countries. Sadly, the replica of the image below, deceased mother, child, or both, is a reality somewhere in the world right now. Gut-wrenching. Healthcare is a human right issue. While we cannot save every mother or child, sex education and knowledge in reproductive process is critical. Just imagine the stages of agonizing death a woman goes through when seeking an abortion, a procedure that is considered one of the safest in today's 21st century world. These deaths are unethical and immoral. Also, I do wonder if this epidemic in maternal and fetal mortality is complicated by societal immoral activities, the world of relativism. Well, with concerted effort, it is possible for the uneducated poor caught in the web of ignorance to grasp basic reproductive knowledge, understand the window of fertilization, guard against unprotected sex, use contraceptives. The latter statements are the bullseye of BioChoice Medical Group. After all, the good book proclaims, people ought not perish for lack of knowledge. Hosea chapter 4, verse 1. Now, despite international effort like the United Nations and non-governmental organizations, unintended pregnancy and abortion is approximately 90% because pre-existing medical history are rarely evaluated on those who need the service. BAG listens to understand. Counseling, teaching, seminars are all part of the package, and we believe repetition of the basic reproductive rights, education and options heightens awareness and responsibility. A speak-up culture is what we advocate for as well. Men and women take more responsibility when they understand what the end point is, what the goal is a win-win situation. Access to reproductive and sexual education should begin at home, extend to schools and churches. Likewise, corporate entities should include inappropriate sexual behaviors in their principle of responsibility if they have not done so already. After all, there is a high probability of unintended pregnancy in such setting that is oozing with power. Anyway, the use of family planning, sexual education, including utilization of contraceptives, is not only an ethical approach, it saves lives. Stakeholders, secular and non-secular, can do more to stem the tide of high maternal and fetal mortality. Who decides? The autonomous adult with decision-making capacity should decide their health issues, not the unlicensed medical personnel who carry on clandestine abortions in homes and back alleys with no consideration for QOL. Complications from botched abortions and deaths is at an alarming proportion. Lives, homes, and communities are being destroyed, especially in Nigeria, where attempts to revise the abortion laws has failed twice. Meanwhile, England, that handed off the colonial rule and law, has long changed their abortion law. Come on, foresighted leaders. Let's do something different. Ancient abortion law is not compatible with contemporary sexual reality. In my research, I noted that the Nigerian Medical Association has really worked hard to make a change, and I pray they press on until there is a change. Countries that operate on archaic reproductive law, like Nigeria, we advocate that they include abortion matters on their political debate, and that religious and cultural leaders ought to have a paradigm shift, given that sexual encounter is ubiquitous. Legitimate relationship that results in marriage is not for everyone, unfortunately. On this premise, perhaps a realistic, moral, and ethical approach is needed to adjudicate all partners of sexual encounter, not just girls and women. Patient preference and respect for autonomy. Oh no, pardon me for the typo on this slide. Well, preference ties to decision-making, drawing on possibility of personal values such as religion, culture, moral, family, economic factors, and what is of best interest to the patient. If my instinct serves me right, every reasonable adult have blemish. Perhaps it is time to refrain from casting stones as it was in the Mosaic period. Instead, quote, mark those who cause divisions and offenses contrary to the doctrine which you have learned. Avoid them, for they who as such serve their own belly, and by words and fair speeches deceive the hearts of the simple. End quote. Romans chapter 6, verse 17 to 18. Let us stand for human rights and justice. Unintended pregnancy and/or abortion, self-identity is derailed, even with the best family support. Worst for those without any support at all. They're excommunicated. Denial of inheritance are part of the control measures meted out on victims by their family members, extreme conservative parents will do anything to uphold family honor and status quo, including orchestrating death of mother and fetus. Now, when a person with unintended pregnancy mysteriously dies, whispers from the community ensues. The religious belief is that the girl is damned for being pregnant outside marriage and perhaps will burn in hell if she aborts the pregnancy. On the other hand, what if the judgmental folks reached out to the victims, opened up locked churches and doors of empty mansions? Will these victims whose views are so bleak refuse? I think not. Matter of fact, strike that. I know that they will not refuse because I volunteered at a pregnancy counseling center, like I said earlier, and came away convinced that abortion is often the last resort in their cry for help. On the trail of tears, permit me to tell you a little bit about my family. The photo below is that of Victoria, an albino orphan child, approximately 15-year-old 3 decades ago. Like many children, she had hope until unintended pregnancy derailed her dreams in Kaduna State, Nigeria, where she lived with her brother. Her sexual partner ghosted. Senior brother provided Vicky a one-way bus ride out of his house. Vicky was shamed and stigmatized. Vicky was my sibling. I lived in Lagos at the time with other siblings. I am second child, first daughter in the birthing order. My attempt to help Vicky, despite cultural norms and whispers, paid off, or so it seemed. We huddled in my nook, feeding from hand to mouth. My earnings as an employee came from Federal Radio Corporation of Nigeria as an announcer broadcaster. I also did some freelance and television programs in Lagos. My hustle to put food on the table was unabated until I gleaned an advancement opportunity in the new world, America. I discussed my options with my siblings, got their blessings. Final exit plan from Nigeria included fronting a 1-year payment for flat in Lagos, so my siblings can continue to have shelter. I relocated to Los Angeles. Within a year of my departure from Nigeria, the saddest news of Vicky's ultimate demise after a prolonged disappearance which I know nothing about was phoned in from my siblings in Lagos to me in Los Angeles. The most bone-chilling phone call I've ever received. Remorse engulfed me. Agonizing pang pierced my senses. My tear-filled eyes rained as my mind visualized Vicky's life, attempting to eke out a living on the streets of Lagos without a care from extended families just because she made a mistake. The life of an orphan is uniquely tough. I know it firsthand. May Vicky's soul and the souls of all victims who died as a result of unintended pregnancy rest in peace. The pain of my sister's demise is still etched in my heart. I believe that Vicky's death could have been prevented. The unexpected pregnancy should not continue to be a silent suicide for adolescent girls and women. Why is it a cakewalk for stakeholders to turn blind eye on sexual encounters, yet a Herculean task for the same stakeholders to realistically and ethically streamline sex abortion issues? This was cathartic for me to write. I've actually written an article about this also in my collegiate newspaper. That's for another time. Thank you. I highlight duty to care on this slide. It is not permissible to ethically withhold pregnancy preventive medical services for those in need, because this potentiates maternal fetal mortality. I know I bring opposing views to entrenched traditional patriarchal and religious beliefs, but envision the humanity and souls crying out for help. And I also ask that we benchmark scorecards of countries with better policy on this subject. Countries like South Africa, England, that have done well with their citizens on this subject. Now, overturning of America's federal abortion law Roe v. Wade and passing it to states to legislate abortion issues after nearly 50 years, that's a travesty. A discussion for another time, because the marginalized will pay for it. Finally, do get involved. Culture of silence is repressive. beginning of life ought to be a pleasure, not a death sentence. I invite your civil discussion. Feel free to share.